As kids, we all had that one footballer. The one that we loved over a beautiful goal, piece of play, dribbling, tackle, whatever it may be. That one footballer stuck with us forever. Maybe it was because you saw a random highlight reel of them online, or the fact that they played for your favorite club. Nonetheless, they always stuck with you. New stars emerge, the game evolves, and perspectives change for all football fans, especially me. But we are all clouded a little bit by nostalgia at times, and particularly when it comes to our favorite players. I've had a lot of favorite players over the years. Some I was completely obsessed with. So in today's video, we will be going over my top 5 favorite footballers of all time. And just a reminder, because many people cannot tell the difference, these are my personal preference top 5. So yes, when Messi isn't in here, don't get mad. So without further ado, let's get back to the studio.
In at number 5, it was between 3 players, and by far the toughest decision that I had during making this entire video. These are 2 of the greatest number 9s that I've ever seen play for Manchester United, as well as a midfielder who had all the ability in the world. All 3 of these players were so well-rounded and phenomenal both on and off the ball in different ways. And that was between Dimitar Berbatov, Paul Pogba, and Robin van Persie. But purely based off what I watched of him in a United shirt, the iconic goals, and the 2012-2013 Premier League winning season, it is hard to go past RVP. This man pretty much single-handedly won us the league back in 2013. The perfect swan song for legendary manager Sir Alex Ferguson and his final year in charge at the club. One thing I find hilarious with Van Persie though is how he comes across as more of a United legend opposed to an Arsenal legend, despite only spending 3 seasons at the club compared to his 8 at Arsenal. Despite that, some of the goals that he scored were an absolute joke. The famous volley against Villa, his flying header for Netherlands at the 2014 World Cup, and the famous commentary call of thank goodness he chose red over blue free kick in the Manchester derby that season. Another thing I love as well is left-footed players. Seriously, I don't know what it is, but an absolute bagsman with a clinical killer left foot really is something else. RVP for me was also the last of a dying breed of strikers. We still see a few of them now, the likes of Kane and Lewandowski in particular, who weren't necessarily quick, but due to their positioning and how well-rounded they are, it felt like they were always in the right area of the pitch to be a threat. Whether you gave RVP a threaded ball in behind a defender, lobbed over the top, back to goal, or stuck him on a set piece, the crowd always just felt a sense that something could happen here. And that's why he slots in at my number 5 spot. Moving into my number 4 spot now is a Spanish man, a midfield powerhouse that dominated the 2010s. He scored iconic goals and became the blueprint for what a box-to-box midfielder is today. It is none other than Andres Iniesta. This guy in 2011, if he was playing today, would seriously be the best player in world football. He was an absolute joke. He's probably the player that taught me the most about football and how the game is played both in and out of possession. When it comes to midfielders, sometimes your biggest compliment is being threatening, creative, and dominant whilst taking as few touches as possible. And this bloke personified it. Once again, another player that wasn't overly quick, but he moved like he was in water. Players could hardly lay a hand on him. But one thing I can never fault Iniesta for is his pass selection. The perfect timing, the perfect weight of pass, on a dime, pretty much without fail. For those watching that have only started watching the game of football in the last 5 or 6 years, do yourself a favor and go back and watch this guy. Alongside his partners in crime, Xavi and Sergio Busquets, they are quite literally, undisputedly, the greatest midfield trio ever assembled. And let's also not forget, in the World Cup final, that he literally won his nation their first ever World Cup in extra time. Like, that alone cements him as a footballing legend. Some of the words to describe him include magician, genius, maestro, and the list goes on. And that's why I have him in at number 4. Moving into the first podium position now, where I can say the gap between 3rd and 4th is wide. There has actually been a lot of dialogue around this player in the last few weeks, particularly around where he sits in comparison to the greatest players of his generation. Let me tell you first, he sits at the table alongside Messi and Ronaldo. During his prime, you could really make an argument for him being the best in the world. This is none other than Neymar Jr. And Jill Scott comparing this bloke to Mane might be one of the biggest insults to a footballer that I've ever heard. The flair, the output, the sheer pace, and how defenders look like they'd never kicked a football before when going up against him one-on-one was on another level. I don't even want to hear people make the argument for Ronaldinho over Neymar. Neymar is the greatest Brazilian winger of all time, coming in the top 10 for the Ballon d'Or rankings whilst playing at Santos in the Brazilian league at the age of 19 is beyond insane. But with Neymar, it was everything about him. The haircut, the boots, the swagger he had on the pitch. Still to this day, my favorite player from any season in football history is Neymar's 2014-2015 campaign, particularly his run in the knockout stages of the Champions League. 3 goals in the quarterfinals, 3 goals in the semi-final, and a goal in the final at just 23 is absolutely disgusting. Joint top goal scorer of the tournament, and in my opinion, he should have won the Ballon d'Or that season. Let's also not forget one of the greatest footballing games ever, the remontada against PSG, where he single-handedly won the game for Barcelona. I could talk about this bloke all day, whether it be his famous sombrero goal against Villarreal, his run to the UCL final with PSG during COVID, or just skinning defenders with an infinite catalogue of skills. Neymar had it all, and that is why he is number 3 on my list. Moving into number 2, and back on the theme of Manchester United, this player undoubtedly reached the heights of his career wearing the white colours of Real Madrid, but he still had 6 glorious seasons at the Red Devils, winning 3 league titles and a Champions League, joining the club as a 17-year-old and leaving as the best player in world football, and then going on to become the greatest player of all time. It is Mr. Champions League himself, Cristiano Ronaldo, a 5-time Ballon d'Or winner, a 5-time Champions League winner, the highest goal scorer in football history. He was a defender's worst nightmare and is no joke, by far the most dynamic forward in football history. 6'2", strong, quick, the most lethal right foot I've ever seen. If he was in the opposition's half, it looked like he could score from anywhere, including the halfway line. Adapting his game from being a wide midfielder in a 4-4-2 to playing as an out-and-out winger and then a poacher up front. No player comes close to how much he adapted his game throughout his career. We all know his extended catalogue of iconic moments, hat-trick comebacks in return legs of the Champions League, absurd aerial efforts, Puskas awards, the iconic invention of the knuckleball, and dominating everywhere that he went. As Peter Drury said best, Madeira, Manchester, Madrid, Turin, and Manchester again. And no matter where he went, he won trophies. If you looked up the definition of a winner, his name would come up in the dictionary. I could make a whole video dedicated to my favorite moments of Cristiano. We all know how the story goes. A World Cup would be the final cherry on top of his legacy that is extended to before I was born. Running down the wing, hear United sing, Viva Ronaldo. He sits comfortably at number 2. And now for my number 1, the man that made me fall in love with the game of football. The first jersey that I ever owned had his name on the back of it. It would be an absolute crime as a United supporter to have our club's greatest ever goal scorer and one of, if not the greatest English footballer of all time, Wayne Rooney, any lower than first place. One thing I will preface is if this was about footballing figures, Sir Alex Ferguson would be number 1 on this list, but obviously I don't remember him as a player. But back onto Wayne Rooney, and where do I start? My love for Wayne Rooney, honestly, it all began back when I was about 7 years old. Me and my family took a holiday to Thailand, and as many people who have been to Asian countries know, they have the stands with all the knockoff jerseys, players' names on the back, and it just so happened that the one that I picked out was a Manchester United jersey with Wayne Rooney on the back. One of my most fond memories of Wayne Rooney, and part of the reason I picked out that jersey in the first place, was when he scored that famous overhead goal against Manchester City in the Manchester Derby. It was unbelievable, and still to this day, my favourite goal of all time. The one thing I've always admired about Rooney is his adaptability throughout his career, beginning as an out-and-out number 9 to then transitioning into a support player at times, playing off the right, and even dropping deeper into midfield as he entered his 30s. I mentioned earlier about Van Persie's famous volley against Villa, but what a lot of people don't talk about is the absolutely ridiculous 40-yard ball over the top put on a dime by none other than Wayne Rooney. Despite being one of the biggest game players I've ever seen pull on a United jersey, what really separated Rooney though was his engine and football IQ. He wasn't just a naturally gifted footballer, he understood the game at a level that most didn't. Whether it was pressing defenders, tracking back 60 yards, or creating space for others, he did the dirty work without hesitation. You'd see him 1 minute dropping deep to pick up the ball and the next arriving in the box to finish a move that he started. That all-round game is what made him so unique. He wasn't just playing his role, he was playing every role. Aggressive, fearless, ruthless, and always played for the badge. That was Wayne Rooney. People also forget, back when Ronaldo and Messi were coming up as youngsters, Rooney was in those conversations with them. One of the most complete footballers I've ever seen, and the reason that I fell in love with the game. And that was my list. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know your top 5 footballers. Let me know if I should give my top 5 for any other sport besides football. And I'll see you in the next video.